Welcome to Epilogue Podcast, the show where we discuss some stuff that happened on a different show ages ago which nobody really cares about anymore.
Hello, I'm Portponky.
And I'm LeBloc.
Today we're discussing Deep Space Nine, Season 5, Episode 11, The Darkness and the Light. A killer hunts down Kira's colleagues from the Bajoran Resistance.
What'd you think of this one?
This episode was terrifying.
Yeah, it is.
Star Trek doesn't usually do kind of horror and extreme tension. Well, they do tension quite well, but this was just downright grisly. They really they really made it quite a scary episode.
It helps that this episode has fantastic direction and music that help the unnerving quality that it has.
What do you feel was good about the direction in particular?
One scene in particular, it's probably my favorite scene so far, and that's this long, slow, zooming take when Kira is talking about joining the Resistance. She is lying down and Odo is behind her, and it's framed so well and the lighting is just right, and it's an intense moment, and it's as if we're leaning in to hear more about Kira's tales. It's so good. I love that scene.
A couple of other nice shots at the start with the Vedics. There was a nice overhead pan to see the beams of light, and Kira jumping through Odo's office just as he arrives was really cool.
And there were a lot of little shots where the framing is really nice as well. I can remember Bashir speaking with Kira, and there was some nice depth of field stuff going on there.
Of course, the obvious example is the end with Scylla and Prim in The Darkness and the Light, although it's a bit obvious to have all the shadows and the bright light on Kira. As a metaphor, it's clunky, but visually, I can excuse the clunkiness because it looked pretty awesome.
It could have been way clunkier. I think it was handled as well as it could have been. It was an obvious choice to make, but it was still handled deftly.
The guy had a British accent, so you got the full Hannibal Lecter feeling from him. I don't know why he had a British accent.
Maybe because they were watching too many Disney movies, and Disney movies always have villains with British accents.
Oh, not just Disney. Britain has a long history of producing villains when you want someone that's not as scary as a further Eastern European enemy, but has a touch of class and a touch of the sort of psychopath thing going on.
His narration is so creepy.
That's the sort of thing that could end up kind of hokum, but Star Trek writers tend to have a good grasp on the theatrical, and theatrics is what that guy needed. In fact, if you think about it, there were a lot of minuses to the end scene that it somehow managed to skip over. The guy's lurking around in the shadows. He's got outrageous facial scarring. He's got a British accent. He's spouting this crazy monologue. They're all kind of cliches. But at the same time, it didn't really hamper it. It worked.
I wasn't bothered by any of that. I was sort of... Well, because the episode was... I like the episode so much that this didn't bother me. The facial scarring thing, we've already pointed out that facial reconstruction is trivial, and he could easily have that fixed. There's no reason for him not to do that. But it works within the context of the episode for me.
I agree. It didn't bother me either. Just in retrospect, it is odd that it didn't, maybe.
Plus, it's pretty easy to explain. He's so angry that she did this to him, and that he wants it to remain on his face so that he could one day track her down. Well, have her track him down and shove her handiwork in her face.
Well, that's always the excuse they give for people losing limbs. Even the guy, what's his face? Either Lupus or Pharrell. I don't know which is which. With one arm, gave the reason in the previous episode he appeared that he didn't want the arm back because that would forever remind him of what the Kardashians did.
People are stubborn. I can see that.
The transport accident was probably the most gruesome thing we've seen on this show.
Oh, by far. Once it was clear she was burning or something was going wrong, I thought, well, there's no way they'll show anything. And then they show her charred remains, and the shot sits there. You see it.
It keeps showing it as well. And then Bashir's doing the autopsy, and he's got the cloth, and you think, he'll put the cloth over that.
Yeah.
But no, you get another eyeful.
Even while Kira walks in, he could quickly cover that thing. Nope.
Oh, it's really gruesome. It was like something out of The Thing. I mean, there are much worse things in other shows and stuff. I guess it stands out because Star Trek tends to be not free of violence, but often the violence is quite light.
It's been light enough where this is a departure and you don't expect it.
I think if someone had a weak stomach, this episode might do them in completely. Or that scene, anyway. Whoa, jeez.
Going along with not pulling punches like that, Kira, in the end scene, when she talks about the resistance, she uses the word rape, and that's a loaded word. And I was surprised to hear that in this show. And I thought that was cool that they didn't hold back, and it was a devastating time for her. She would use that kind of language.
She actually used that word previously in the episode Duet. And considering it was kind of a sort of Holocaust level, I could see where she's coming from. I like that she didn't change her tune. She didn't.
What do you mean?
She didn't apologize for what she had done, or she didn't even feign regret for the actions she'd taken. She didn't fall into the sort of damsel in distress role, and it's good because she wouldn't.
Yeah, it's awesome that she takes charge and owns up to what she did.
And whilst she says everyone was a legitimate target, or all Cardassians, which in a post 9/11 world, it's complicated for a character to come out with rhetoric like that. Although it fits Kira's character, absolutely. She has no, what's the word? Well, she maybe has regrets about what she did, but not the reasons why she did it. And it would be weird if she suddenly had at the end of this episode.
I'm glad she said what she did, because if she walked back from that, it would have betrayed the Kira we've seen up to this point.
Absolutely. This episode is more an examination of Kira than it is hunting the bad man.
We find out that Kira is unstoppable even when pregnant. And she knocks out people in one punch. That was great.
She knocks out 3 burly men.
In a row.
Which is... And they're trained security guards. Well, trained by Odo. And we know his interviewing strategy is not particularly in-depth. It's strange when she was doing that and the security guard was holding her back, saying, "Don't open the door, you'll vent the whole corridor to space." Why is that an option for the door?
That is silly. There should be precautions. Hey, maybe you don't want to open this door. There could be catastrophic results.
If I was designing a door for a space station, that's probably one of the first things I would think of. Is the pressure going to make the whole thing explode when it opens?
Maybe it was a passive compliment because she wouldn't use the computer. She would just pry it open with her bare hands. He's complimenting her strength.
She would just punch through the door.
Yeah.
If that were the case, she could probably survive in a vacuum of space.
Oh, I was so glad before that explosion went off. We're told that Keiko and Molly are not on the station, so you don't even have to think, oh no, what if Molly was in that? Or something horrific like that.
Ugh, that is the kind of thing that they wouldn't passively do mid-episode. Then again, you never know when O'Brien's about to have a bad day. They did something in this episode which is rarely done, and I think is one of the best things you can do in a horror story.
Oh?
And that is analyzing creepy sounds.
Oh, I want to compliment that sound. It is so creepy because it doesn't sound like they were trying really hard to make it sound creepy. It sounds a little alien and it sounds off, and that's exactly what they needed. And when Kira's in the promenade and then hears it off to the side, it's it makes you go, "Oh man, what's going on? What's going to happen?"
And in the security office, when it just comes up on the monitor, that's 3. But what really sold it for me was the scene with Nog deliberating over it. Once you have a creepy sound, it's not like a scary visual or a guy jumping out. It kind of works its way into your brain, and when they go over it again and again, it's sort of drilling in there. Plus, I want to compliment that the way Dax analysed the sound was actually what I would do. When you notice that it's the same sample 3 times, you isolate that to remove the interference. That's actually correct. It wasn't even technobabble. It was technical talk that made sense.
Way to go, Dax.
Almost didn't know what to think. Wait a minute, they didn't just make this up.
Who is this person and what has she done with Dax?
And using Nog as well, drives around and around in circles and off to the shopping mall. That this is a alien space station. The aliens have superpowers. Well, they don't have superpowers, but they're different, and they have different abilities. They never use that fact on the show.
And this is a great example of why they should. I get the idea that they want us to think, oh, all species are special and we're created equal and we should be all loving and happy. But then that kind of mindset makes you ignore the things that make the species distinct and why they can excel at certain things more than other species. It doesn't mean one is worse than the other. They have differences, and that's fine. And those differences should be explored and celebrated. Not that these are real species, but still.
Yeah, you're almost getting a bit sort of fictionally racist there. I think it works well with the Ferengi because they're portrayed as jerks often, so they go out of their way to distinguish them as having positive traits, whereas Klingons, for example, they try not to emphasize positives and negatives. They're just kind of, warrior-ish. They rarely say that Worf is supposedly 10 times stronger than a human or something like that. They never say, "Oh, this is dangerous, Worf. You do it because if you get hit, you probably won't die, whereas we will."
They should.
Of course, they should. They do occasionally. I mean, they don't completely avoid it, but the fact that it stands out in this that Nog was doing audio tests because of his massive ears shows that it's uncommon for them to obsess over racial traits. Oh, wait a minute. Did a 180 at the end there.
How do you interpret that scene? Why Nog was there? Do you think they asked him? There's no reason for me to think this, but I got the impression that he just butted in and thought, well, I have giant ears. Let me help them out here. They don't know what they're doing. I don't get the feeling they asked him.
I get the feeling Dax asked him. Kira obviously didn't because she was confused as to why someone with giant ears might be better at hearing. So, well, fair enough. A bunch of her friends had just been murdered, and she's heavily pregnant. Let's not criticize her. But I get the feeling Dax probably said, "Ensign Nog, I need help with a thing."
I suppose either scenario is plausible, but I keep imagining Nog seeing Dax trying to figure this out and thinking, oh, a woman can't do that. Let me help her out.
Nog's not like that anymore.
Deep down, he's still a Ferengi. Well, not even deep down. You just look at him. He's still a Ferengi.
Okay, superficially and perhaps even deep down, he's still a Ferengi. Ferengi. But at the Academy, they punched the sexism out of him. Because that kind of cultural trait is something that you can easily deprogram someone from in a year.
I have one gripe with this episode. They did something here that we applauded a different episode for not doing.
Is it when Bashir explains that she had the herbs that counteracted the sedative?
Exactly. We were already told that information, and then he had to re-explain it. I was so happy when it happened again, where we're given some vital information in what seems like a mundane scene, and then it proves pivotal at the end. But then Bashir has to go and explain it.
I can see why they did, though. It was a surprise to me when she gets up from the sedative. Not like, whoa, because you kind of know she's going to do something. But it takes a moment to click. Oh, yes, of course. It counteracts the herbs, undo the sedative he happened to choose. But I can see why they didn't want viewers getting lost, because it is quite subtle in this case.
It's not as obvious here, yeah.
At least they explained it after the fact and not beforehand.
Oh, that would have been so much worse.
No one seemed to address that Kira was probably under extreme mental strain for most of this episode.
Nope.
They sort of said, oh, go have a lie down. But when a psychopathic killer is stalking you and killing all your friends, is having a lie down really sufficient?
Another thing I would like to compliment is Cisco's uniform, because he looks way better and he doesn't look like he's wearing a ton of layers.
Not in every scene. Some of them he's a bit layery.
He's still figuring it out.
Yeah. Maybe they gave him a set of uniforms, like a casual, smart, and he just put them all on.
So he's always ready.
Then someone dragged him aside and said, you're wearing 3 uniforms. You only need to wear one.
But what if I need my formal uniform and then immediately after need my casual uniform?
He's wearing his swimming costume under all that.
It's usually you who compliments the music, but this time it's me. I really liked the music during the dark scene when Kira has unknown intruders in her quarters.
It didn't stand out to me, but as I've said many times, Star Trek music tends to be high quality. I think maybe I couldn't enjoy the music because I wasn't breathing for most of this episode. It's really tense.
It is really tense. I think I paid more attention to the music because the direction was so good, and then that heightened my senses for what was being projected at me.
You, for a moment, acted like a Ferengi?
Yes, I turned into a Ferengi for the duration of this episode.
I'm so sorry.
I thought exclusively of profit and rules of acquisition, which there was one in this episode.
Yes, and it was a repeat.
Oh, it was?
Yep, it was in past tense part 1.
Okay, I remember the exploit them part. I thought they reused it for another rule, and I thought, wow, that's terrible. But that's better that it's actually a repeat.
They repeat them now and again just to make it seem more believable that they're a real rule set. Well, like we say with world building, you can't just keep making new stuff, you have to retread, otherwise it doesn't stick together. I can't remember what we said about this last time. I imagine that we criticized it for having to explain itself by saying exploit them on the end.
We did.
It could literally just say exploit people in your debt. That's they don't need to trump it up.
But then you don't have the comedy reversal.
Yes, you don't have the subtle dig that Ferengi hate their own families, which Ferengi would love to remind themselves about all the time. Do you have a valuable quote of wisdom from the show?
The light only shines in the dark, and sometimes innocence is just an excuse for the guilty.
It kind of never really explored the duality of good and evil that much. So Kira's line there didn't really... It was good that they put a line like that in. Because, to be honest, Scylla and Prin could have had a lot more time in the episode. He was an interesting guy, and what he was saying was kind of worthy of analysis, maybe, or just a bunch of cliches, but I have no idea what I'm saying, actually. Hang on. So why did you pick this quote?
I picked it because it is something worth talking about and exploring, and it's a shame that we only get it at the very end of the episode. I was kind of hoping that this would be a two-parter. Once I saw how close to the end it was and Kira was captured, I was hoping maybe they won't sweep in and rescue her, and then this will continue and we'll further this conversation. But it ends right there. That's all we get. And the rest of the episode wasn't about that. But it is kind of nice that it leaves you with this idea. So here, think about this. So I like it in that sense.
Yeah, that's what I meant to say. Well, that is kind of similar to how I felt. There's an interesting analysis of, evil can't exist without goods and vice versa. But you just get a snippet at the end and it's left hanging.
I hope they don't drop it completely, and we'll explore it further down the line.
The line between good and evil.
Yes.
They
But more
venture
specifically,
to that territory fairly often.
yeah, but more specifically, the resistance.
We'll have to see. Unless we get a vision from the prophets. The only way we'll find out is if we actually go and watch the stuff that happens next.
Let's do that.
Yes.